Hello, everybody. My name is Heath Adams, and I'm super excited to have you here for my keynote talk at Hack at the Harbor. Flipping over to our PowerPoint, which I'm going to flip back and forth today, we're going to be talking about the tips from the other side of the interview. So, we're going to talk about the things that we went through recently hiring a junior penetration tester for our team at TCM Security and some of the candidates that we saw, some of the applicant profiles, and what we think can make you stand out amongst a large group of applicants. Before we get started, I'm briefly just going to go over who I am. So, I am again Heath Adams. I go by the Cyber Mentor as a handle online. You may have seen me before, maybe you haven't, but if you haven't, I do Twitch streaming, I do YouTubing, I am big into education, and I also am an ethical hacker. So if you don't know what ethical hacker is, I'm basically paid to hack into companies. I have a company called TCM Security. We are a consulting firm that focuses primarily on ethical hacking and penetration testing, but we also do cybersecurity education and training, again, mostly in the ethical hacking space. So I used to be an accountant. I decided that I wanted to get into IT. Shortly after getting into IT, I found out about ethical hacking and learned that you could become a hacker and get paid to do it and not go to jail. I always thought hackers were bad people. And once I got into IT and started learning about the security space, I quickly realized that there are good hackers as well. Uh, Took over for me as a passion, and I just started getting as much experience as I can in the IT space, but also focusing on anything I could do to become an ethical hacker, from getting certifications and getting training and building out my labs and eventually blogging about it, YouTubing about it. And it just kind of took off and became a career for me. And I've been on both sides of this career, and that kind of leads me into why I want to give this talk. So a lot of times I'm asked by people, how do you get into ethical hacking? And that's kind of what we're here for today. And I feel like I've given the same talk over and over. I've talked about what people can do from certifications and knowledge and education and training. And I feel like that information is out there. I feel like it's been said over and over again. But what we don't see a lot of times is the other side of the conversation. What can we do to impress the interviewer once we've met the criteria? And we'll kind of talk about what that criteria is. But once we're kind of there, how do we get our resume in front of people and get it past HR, get it past the hiring manager? What can we do in that situation? What can we do once we're in a phone screen or in an interview? And how can we get around some of the barriers that might be there? Because nowadays, ethical hacking is a very competitive field. It's a field where a lot of people are trying to get into it, but a lot of people are maybe having the same applicant profiles as everybody else. So, how do you stand out when your profile is very similar to 10 other applicants? How can you stand out on a piece of paper to at least get to the interview stage? And then what can you do to stand out at the interview? So, from this side of it, we recently went through an interview process to hire a penetration tester with our team. And I kind of want to talk through the process of what we did and the thought process that we had and what we chose eventually to eventually hire a candidate, why we went through the procedures that we did. So hopefully this can be enlightening and give you an understanding from a hiring aspect of what goes through the hiring person's mind and how that can improve your chances at a job in this field. So, we're going to talk about basic applicant statistics first and kind of cover the process that we went through. So, we put out a call for applications, and we were hiring for a junior penetration tester position. What we would expect of this position is somebody to not have a lot of knowledge in the penetration testing space, maybe have a certification or two in the penetration testing space, but have no real work experience. We were really looking for somebody to come in with a clean slate that we could train and that we could develop into a penetration tester and develop and grow their career. And with that, we received a ton of applications as expected. And the average applicant had somewhere around 3 years of IT experience, which is I'd say ballpark, and that's an okay amount of experience. And I'm going to preface this, by the way, with you don't necessarily need IT experience to land a job in the penetration testing space. However, penetration testing is considered an advanced career field in the IT space. Our red team lead at our company never had a job in IT before getting into pen testing. It's completely possible. However, this is the average of the candidates that were out there. So just because you see, hey, the average person that we interviewed had 4 years of IT experience and you have one, it doesn't mean that you should say, hey, I need to go and not apply for this job because I don't meet the criteria. As long as you feel like you're comfortable in the role, or you'd be comfortable in that role and you have training, maybe you have certifications that can back it up, or add experience to your resume, or you have other soft skills that we'll talk about that maybe you feel like could apply to that job, then you shouldn't hesitate to apply for a position. The worst thing that can happen is that position tells you no. But the best thing that could happen is you could end up with a job. So I feel like the pros and cons there are definitely apply if you feel like you have a reasonable chance at landing that job. If it requires a PhD in computer science and you don't have that, then maybe that's a difference. But here for pen testing fields, most of these jobs are pretty clear cut across the board, especially at the junior level. So with this, our average candidate had roughly 3 years of IT experience. A year and a half or so of that was in security, and barely anybody that applied had pen test experience, and that was expected. The average candidate had 3 IT certifications, of which 2 were pen test related. We pretty much counted in these metrics any certification for ethical hacking. So that could be like certified ethical hacker. That could be the OSCP, which you may have heard of. That could be our certification, which is the PMPT. It could be anything from eLearn Security, anything that was hacking related, we kind of threw into this pen test certification. Anything that was just IT related, like an A plus, Network plus, Security plus, we threw into overall IT certifications and combined these totals. So out of the 3 certifications they had, 2 on average were pen test certifications, and 79% of the applicants had at least a bachelor's degree. We'll talk about degrees here in a second. The screened applicants, and we'll go through the process here, but what we did was we lined all of our applicants up that we got. We took their names, we hid their names, and we put everything in a spreadsheet essentially. And we said, how many years of IT experience do they have? How many years of security experience? How many years of pen test experience? We said, what can we evaluate from certifications? What certifications do they have on the IT side, on the hacking or pen test side? And we started looking at some soft skills, and we had metrics there. We'll talk about soft skills as well here in a slide or two. But what we were trying to do is we were trying to eliminate bias. So we were taking our candidates, we were removing names from them, and then we were putting them into a spreadsheet. So one person put them into a spreadsheet. And then as a team, we looked at these individuals and we said, we want to pick the 6 people that we would be most interested in interviewing. And we tried to evaluate that based on what was on a piece of paper. And you can see at the bottom, it says, at this stage, we can only judge a candidate based on what is in front of us on paper. And from that screening process, we selected 6 people based on, again, how good those individuals looked on a sheet of paper and what filled in our interests. Now, we did look at the technical side with the certifications and experience, but we also looked at soft skills. We looked at if the person had a blog, or if they maybe had a GitHub repository. And again, we're going to talk about the certain soft skills we looked at, but we try to evaluate the candidate as a whole. But again, we eliminated bias, or at least attempted to, by eliminating names or anything that could relate back to these people, because a lot of these people we knew on personal levels, and we tried to take that out of the hiring process. So we eliminated or narrowed down, I should say, our candidates down to 6. And from there, we screened those 6 people with a phone call. That phone call was done by a non-technical person, and this was done intentionally. We were trying to see, can a technical individual relay information to a non-technical person in the way that that non-technical person could understand? So we gave this non-technical person on our team a list of questions to ask the candidates. We also gave that person the right answers for those questions. So the screener knew which questions were right or wrong, and if the candidate was getting the questions right or wrong based on the answers that were provided. However, we still got feedback from the screener that the people were personable, whether they were technical, whether they could relay technical information to an individual that was non-technical. Because a lot of times in this field, we have instances where we are talking to somebody that's non-technical, but they're a decision maker, and we need to be able to relay technical information to them at a high level. And that is big for what we do in the pen test space, especially in the consulting space that we're in. So the screener evaluated people not only on their technical answers, but how well they were able to convey that over to a non-technical person. So through that screening process, we ended up getting an average candidate of 4.25 years of IT experience, a little over 2 years of security experience, and then 0 years again, really on the pen test side, which was as expected. Now you can see the number bumps up on certifications. They had an average of 4 IT certifications, the average applicant did, or average screen applicant did. And out of those were 3 pen test certifications. So we're starting to see that, hey, we have a little bit more experience. We've got a little bit more on the certification side and a little bit more pen test certification side. And 100% of them had at least a bachelor's degree. Now, I'm a big believer that degrees don't really make or break the difference. So I'm going to go on this really quick, this little tangent. But for my experience, I have a master's degree. Do I think it's helped my career? Yeah, absolutely. But do I think that you absolutely need one to be in this field? No, I don't. I think it's a box that can be checked, and some places do require you to have a degree. So if it's a situation where you weigh the pros and cons, and you also weigh the opportunity costs, where you say, if I go to college for 4 years and I spend X amount of dollars, is it worth it to me? Will I make that money back plus some? Will I make more money in the long run by going to college? Will I have better career aspirations by going to college? In the pen test side of things, maybe not, probably not. There's plenty of people that I know without a college degree, but in the world that we live in, I feel like there's a lot of emphasis put on college degrees. Now, having a college degree will at least open more doors for you. It has to, in my opinion. It should open more doors. It should check a box for applicants, or it should check a box for employers that are requiring you to have a degree. But at the end of the day, if you choose not to have a degree, that's completely okay. The fact that 100% of people went through that had a degree doesn't necessarily mean that's what we were looking for, but that's how the statistics skewed in this aspect. I think that you could get a job without a degree, and I think that I know plenty of people without them. But as long as you're comfortable knowing that, hey, it might close some doors, but you can still supplement that with getting experience. You can still supplement that with getting certifications. And if you're not looking to go into a management space or a C-level, like a CISO or a CEO or a CIO or a CTO, that kind of executive suite, then you might not need the degree at all. So you have to weigh where you want to go in your career, where you want to be, and if you really need that, and what the opportunity cost is of going and getting that degree, because it may be that the degree is too expensive to go for, and you would make more money in the long run by not getting the degree. So that's my little tangent. Not necessary in the space, but it's how it lined up in this applicant pool. So on top of looking at people from a technical skill level, what's your IT experience? What's your certifications? What's your security experience? We also evaluated the soft skills that we saw on the resume. And I'm going to preface this by what's written at the bottom. We understand that every individual situation is different. Okay, not everybody has the time to go out and get soft skills. Time is a luxury. Not everybody has time to do that. Some of us have families. Some of us maybe work 2 jobs, especially if we're trying to get into the IT space and we never have before. Soft skills take time to develop, and we completely understand that. This is what we can go off of based on a sheet of paper, and the soft skills that were presented to us, we definitely evaluated as positives. And this could be something like, hey, do you have an active blog? Okay, well, if you don't have the time to write an active blog, did you mention in there at least somewhere that you like to write? That could signal to us that, hey, maybe this person doesn't have the time to write a blog. That's okay, because maybe they've got family, they've got jobs, they've got other things. But if we were to task them to write a blog for us during working hours, would it be something that they would enjoy? So anywhere in there that says you like to write or you like to read or just telling us a hobby could go a long way on the soft skills and how we evaluate those as an employer. Same thing with a GitHub. Like, do you have a GitHub or do you like to code? Do you have any aspirations for coding? And if it says in there like, hey, I really like Python, okay, that's great. You don't have to have a fully active GitHub, but is there something in there that shows us that you like to code? Because we have coding projects at our company, and we would love to have somebody here that loves to code and help out with coding projects. And I'm getting at this because when we hire, at least at our organization, we hire based on who can fit in the best with the team. Who is a team player, who is somebody that is going to, if we have downtime and, somebody wants to help assist on another project, could they write a blog for us or could they help out somebody with coding? Because pen testing is fairly cyclical. We were very busy in quarter 4 and quarter 1, so end of the year, beginning of the year, because people are trying to spend budget or trying to spend remaining budget or new budget. And we're kind of slow in quarter 2 and quarter 3. So we have a lot of bench time where people can go and train and study and learn and develop and grow, but also, might be asked to write a blog or maybe see where their passions are. So these soft skills are things that we value as a team. We're interested in, does the applicant create any sort of content at all? That could be a YouTube channel, Twitch stream, blog again. Again, this is something that is a time commitment, so it's not a big deal if you don't, but it's just things that we look at. Have you ever given a talk at a conference? Have you ever volunteered at a conference? Have you ever volunteered ever? Have you ever built a home lab out? What do you study? What are the things that you value? And we just try to look at soft skills because, again, all we can do is look at a piece of paper and evaluate somebody at this stage. We have to take from a large group of people and say, who is it that we want to narrow down and what can we value here? Now, if you have years of experience and you have tons of certifications, the soft skills still matter, but maybe they don't matter as much. But if you're somebody that is like our red team lead, right? For example, his name is Joe. If you're somebody like Joe, who came into the IT world and had no experience whatsoever and wanted to skip over working help desk and wanted to skip over maybe being a SOC analyst or working as a network engineer and go right into being in a pen test team. Well, what's going to make Joe stand out in that situation? Well, it's since he doesn't have the certifications, maybe, or he did have certifications, but since he doesn't have the experience, what did he do to make himself stand out? Well, he did have an active YouTube channel and Twitch channel. He was active in communities. He was constantly giving back to people and helping people out and assisting. He was volunteering. He was doing a lot of things that on the soft skill side, we said, hey, this person might not know a ton, but they're hustling. They're out there getting certifications. They're out there creating content and giving back to the community. And we saw that as a big positive in Joe was our first hire, and Joe developed into where he's at now, which is leading a red team. And I think that, the soft skills should be incredibly valued because what are you going to do to separate yourself from the pack? And these are kinds of things that we need to consider. So with that being said, I kind of want to take a quick look at how you could pass the paper test. And we're going to do that by taking a short look at a resume. Okay, so the resume that we're going to pick on today is mine, and I just kind of want to show you what we're after when we're looking at applicant and how maybe you should consider organizing your resume. Now, typically we tell people to keep their resume to 1 page, maybe 2 pages, depending on the amount of experience that you have. Majority of people that we looked at from the paper test, they had 1 page on average, sometimes 2, but some people did have like 5 or 6. And when you start having that many pages, it's very hard to pay attention. At the end of the day, when you're submitting your resume, the person reviewing your resume probably has 15 to 30 seconds to look at the resume. And I can tell you that I cannot read 2 pages of a resume in 30 seconds, not word for word. So I'm not going to read every single word of your resume. That's just what it comes down to. The person who has 100 resumes on their desk and very, very limited time is not going to look at every single aspect of your resume. What they're going to do is do an eye check. Does this pass the eye test? Okay. What I'm looking at for a hiring manager is, what's your certification? What certifications do you have? Do you have degrees? Just out of curiosity. And what's your experience? Okay. And that should all be front and center right away. So here you can see I have an objective statement, and I've thrown some keywords in here. I say, hey, like, look, I know Python and Bash. These are buzzwords in case this gets picked up by an automated system. Kali Linux, Metasploit, Burp Suite Pro. These are tools that are very common in the ethical hacking space. Again, that might get picked up by an automated system, but also if somebody is reading this, I could say, hey, look, I'm proficient in translating information from technical to executive management terminology. That means I can give a technical talk, or I can put that at a very high level, which is something that we value and a lot of employers value. Okay, and task management. You might be asked to have multiple projects going on at the same time. They may overlap. How do you handle multiple projects? If you're good at task management, maybe something you should put in your resume. But here I hit people immediately with, hey, I'm educated. If you don't have a college degree, that's fine. But like, you could check the box right away. If somebody's saying, hey, we need at least a bachelor's degree, I could say, yep, check, this person's got a bachelor's. Hey, check, this person has X amount of certifications. Hey, check, this person has experience. So like, you can come through here and see the experience and what you do. And there are great resume writing tools. If you go to GitHub, and actually if you search my GitHub, which is H Maverick Adams, you're able to see this resume. You can download this resume as well and tailor this to yourself if you want to use this template. And this is nice because it puts it all into one page, right? You can go out there and research on how to make these bullets stand out better and what you might want to say. Again, I put in buzzwords and keywords of tools and things that I do at work, but there are recommendations out there that suggest that you should put in metrics. Like, I have worked help desk and I had a 99% close rate within an hour serving over 5,000 employees. Like, giving numbers and giving metrics, or I saved my company $1 million by doing training internally instead of going outbound with training. Just something like that that can help show how you added value to your company and some metrics that you performed while you're at your company. I actually do a terrible job of this, but there are things that you can look up online that can say, hey, here's the best way to write these bulleted points. But again, within 15 to 30 seconds, I want to see what you got going on here. The other thing here that I do is I have a second page for myself. I like to put in here like what other side things I'm doing. Here's all my soft skills. Like, I have military experience. I teach at TCM Security Academy. I have a YouTube channel. I teach at INE. I co-founded a 501(c)(3), or C3, I should say. And I've given talks at all these conferences and I volunteer. And these are like, hey, I'm going to hit you with every single soft skill I have so I can look as impressive as possible to this person. This could be something that you have one soft skill, and that's absolutely fine. It could be like, hey, I built out a home lab. In that home lab, I built out an attack range, and that attack range was able to test for XYZ attacks, and I was able to detect those attacks and then patch those attacks. And I think you could put that in something like the size of maybe this. And especially if you don't have a ton of certifications or you don't have a ton of work experience, you can use that part of your resume to talk about a project or a soft skill or something that you did that can stand out to an employer and help you pass that eye test. So let's go on and move to the phone screen portion. So again, when we were having a non-technical person interview technical people, we were really looking at their ability to communicate. We were looking at who got technical answers correct, but we were also evaluating who could present that technical information to somebody non-technical. So at this point, making sure that you can communicate effectively, making sure that you're technical, because the job does require technical aspect. But beyond that, we're looking at what's beyond the technical aspect. Again, effective communication and making sure that you can relay information to a non-technical person is very, very important. So after we conducted our phone screens, we sat down and we narrowed down our candidates to 3 people. And we wanted to interview those candidates in depth, basically have a 30-minute to an hour long interview. And our process was we had 2 technical people on the phone call and 2 non-technical people on the phone call. We wanted to evaluate the answers. Out of our 3 candidates, we did have 1 candidate that was very, very technically strong, but did not have great communication skills. They were not able to relay to us any information that we were seeking in a non-technical aspect, even when presented with the opportunity to do so. We were also looking for somebody that was interested in us as an organization. You should gather information about the company that you're working for, you may be asked, why do you want to work for this company? Or what questions do you have for us? And you should always consider interviewing your interviewers, if that makes sense. Like at the end of the interview, you should ask your interviewers questions. Why do you work for this company? What excites you about coming to this company? These are questions that you should ask, by the way. What excites you about working for this company? What should I expect my day-to-day job to be? What should I expect to do in a year or 5 years? What growth potential do I have? What training potential do I have? You could ask about things that are important to you. When I was on the interview side and I was looking for a company, I was asking, what's the work-life balance like? Am I expected to work 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week? Do I have to travel? Because I was recently married and I was really looking for something that I could have home balance with. I didn't want to travel a lot. I wanted to be at home. I wanted to get family time in. And I wanted to make sure that the company that I went to valued home and personal life, even if that meant that I took less money. This is just me personally. But I wanted to make sure that the work-life balance was there, that I didn't travel a lot. And I also wanted to make sure that I worked for a company that had a good training budget, that was willing to develop me and grow me into the next stage of my career, whether it be senior pen tester or management or wherever I wanted to go. I wanted to make sure that the opportunity was there with that organization. So if you ask no questions, it could be seen that you really didn't think this through. Not that that's saying that's true, but like you didn't think about anything that you wanted to know. You're looking at this like, hey, I have no interest in this organization whatsoever outside of just getting a job. And that's fine if that's true, but like that's how it comes off. And it's fine if it's not true too, but like this is how we're seeing it on our end. And we want to make sure at the end of the day, especially with a small company, that we're getting the right fit. Another candidate we were sure that we interviewed. We interviewed two people first and second. Out of those two people, we were certain that we were going to hire an individual. That individual was very detail oriented, answered our technical questions with a lot of thought put into them, and then proceeded to ask good questions at the end of the interview. They were very personable and very felt like we could get somebody in here that would be a good fit for our team. And out of both of the candidates that we interviewed, the first candidate that we interviewed, we were like, yes, this person we would absolutely have on the team, and we set that baseline for the next interview. Is the next interview going to, would we rather hire person A or person B? And then we evaluated person B. And all three candidates that we interviewed, we would agree that we would have hired any one of those. So that's how narrow the margins are when you're going through these processes, and how little skills outside of the technical side can stand out. Out of all three candidates, including the one that we ended up hiring, all of them answered the technical questions that we had for them at about the same accuracy. So what it really came down to is we had a getting to know you kind of area first, like who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you want to do in 5 years? What books have you read recently? Where do you get your news from? And we're just trying to kind of get a feel for the candidate, just see their personality, get to know them a little bit better. Then we go into technical questions. And from those technical questions, most of the people answered pretty similar for accuracy. Some individuals did give more detailed answers, or when presented with situations, did answer those second or follow-up questions correctly. But really then it came down to like soft skill questions. We posed situations to the candidates that maybe might have put them in like ethical dilemmas with a client, for example. One of the questions that we asked was, hey, you have a client that's being very difficult. They're not accepting the final report, and they're asking they're asking you for a Word document instead of a PDF document for a final report. And, what would you do in that situation? And, one of the candidates said, I'll just give them the Word document, when really, we're not supposed to do that to keep the integrity of the reporting process, right? So, looking at the evaluation of soft skill answers and some of those other questions is another way that we evaluate our candidates. But at the end of the day, all three candidates we would have hired. So it came down to, what can this person do from a technical level, but also what can they present from a soft skill aspect? At the candidate that was chosen for us, we felt like fit best with our organization from a team player aspect. We felt like this person was eager to learn, was passionate, asked questions, and most importantly, stated that they did not know when a question was presented to them in an interview. For us, when we ask you a question and you don't know the answer, it's better for you to say, "Hey, I don't know," and then maybe even write it down. We're totally impressed when somebody writes something down and reads up on it and knows about it later. And just saying, "Hey, I don't know." If you kind of try to BS us and say, "Oh, here's what I think the answer is," it really doesn't go over very well for us. We'd rather you say, "I don't know, but I'm willing to learn," kind of thing. And something that we do to test that out, by the way, is we do go in the screening process. We might ask a question, that you got wrong in the screening process, and see if you get it right in the actual interview. So that way we could see, okay, well, they didn't know in the screening process. Did they go actually study this and look this up and then check this out? And yes, it's a technical skill to go look that up, but it's also a soft skill to make sure that you can go and you're willing to learn, you're passionate, and you're really invested in your career and in cybersecurity space as well. Okay, I'm going to run through these really quick, but above and beyond is what I like to call this category. And what you're trying to do is, how do you go above and beyond the people that you are competing against, right? You're competing against all these people that have similar profiles to you, most likely. And really, like, having a strong desire to learn, especially in the ethical hacking or cybersecurity space, and being non-complacent. I feel like these two go hand in hand. Making sure that you are keeping up to date with the times. A lot of the questions that we asked in our interview, not a lot, but a few of the questions we asked in our interview were related to very recent exploits and mitigations for those exploits. And we wanted to see how these candidates were keeping up to date with their news, and were they following with recent trends. Like, for example, we had Log4j happen recently. We had an attack called Sam the admin happen recently. We just had the Okta breach happen. And things like that may show up in your interview because they're current events, and because cybersecurity changes. It is a field that is always changing. So you have to have a strong desire to continue learning. It's not one of those fields that you can just come in and say, "Hey, I made it, I'm done," because then that complacency comes in. And if you're complacent, you're going to get left behind because things change so fast. So those two go together. And these are definitely desirable skills that we have when we're interviewing people. The social people skills, talked about already. That's one of those things that you want to make sure that you can relate technical information or translate technical information into non-technical information. Perseverance is something that's very big, and it's one of those things that kind of gets overlooked, but the ability to just not accept the first answer as no. Or a good example of this is, we have a lot of opportunities in this in the hacking space when you're on an engagement, and you might feel like you've hit a wall and there's no way through. But how are you when you can kind of step back and reevaluate and then persevere and go find another path that might lead you to an exploit or to domain admin or whatever it might be? And we see this a lot with evaluation. So you might be asked to be evaluated on your skill set, your technical skill set. That might mean a company might put you through a lab environment. We have our candidates go through our exam environment. So it's one of those things that, do you have the perseverance? Can you overcome, the situation that's in front of you? So you may be asked to do that in an interview as well. Lastly, blogs, Twitter, just staying up to date. Are you a useful member of the community? Do you give back to the community? And this kind of correlates and ties into building connections. You can build connections through having a blog. You can build connections through having a Twitter. You can build connections through creating content or networking with other people. And having 10 strong connections are better than having 1,000 weak ones. I saw somebody giving advice on LinkedIn saying, connect with as many people as you can, as many people as possible. And I think that's really bad advice. I'd rather that somebody gets to know 10 people on a personal level than try to just add 1,000 people randomly and hope that one of those people pays off for them. What value does that bring to you? It would be better for you to network with people and make connections with those people. And you never know where those seeds that you're planting are going to end up and grow for you. It could be as easy as like helping somebody out with a question in a Discord channel or a Slack channel or at a meetup or on Twitter. It could just be giving back to the community. You want to make sure that you're planting seeds and meeting people and networking. And I realized that in IT, a lot of us are introverts. I'm very introverted. And we have the social people skills there. It doesn't mean you have to be extroverted. It just means that you have to make an attempt to network. And that doesn't have to be going out, shaking hands, meeting people, and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. It could be just sparking up a conversation online and just chatting with other people. You could do this anonymously at first. You can build up your confidence and talk to other people and just be a helpful, useful member of society in the cybersecurity space, and it will pay its dividends. Networking is going to be the strongest way or the best way for you to land positions and move around in your career. Having a good resume helps, but knowing people helps so much more. So don't underestimate building strong connections in this space. And lastly, I'm running short on time here. Closing thoughts here. So I like to say, run your own race, not someone else's. When we're on social media, we see a lot of victories. We see all these things that get pumped up to the top that say, hey, I got this bug bounty today for $50,000, or I just got this awesome job, and I just got this certification. I only studied it for 2 months. That's great. Good for them. They ran their own race. But comparison is the thief of joy. Don't worry about what somebody else is doing. Don't worry about how fast somebody ran a mile and how fast your mile time is. At the end of the day, if you run a mile, you both ran a mile. It doesn't matter if they ran it in 6 minutes, you ran it in 12 minutes, you both achieved the same thing. You both ran a mile. So what you want to do is make sure you're worrying about yourself, make sure that you're putting yourself into the best situations you can, and that you're improving every single day. If your peers are improving twice the speed that you are, that's okay. That's their race. That's not your race. You want to make sure that at the end of the day, you're worrying about yourself. You can be proud of others for achieving their achievements. You can, congratulate them, be happy for them. But at the end of the day, you need to worry about yourself and make sure that you are running your own race and not somebody else's. So that is it for this keynote talk. Again, I'm so thankful to be here and be able to talk about some of the processes that we see on our side of the interview table, and that soft skills go a long way. Again, it's not something that at the end of the day that you have to have 100 soft skills on your resume, but how are you going to separate yourself from everybody else? That could be having a blog. That could be something like coding and having a GitHub. That could be creating content, or even just networking and getting to know people. There's so many different ways that you can set yourself apart, and it doesn't have to be one specific way or the other. And there are things that you can take from this and hopefully add to your resume, or add some ideas that you might go do, and that can improve your chances as a candidate. I'm a strong believer, again, that you don't have to have 5 years of experience to get into the pen testing field. You could have no years of experience. It's just, what do you bring to the table? If you don't have that experience, that's going to set you apart from everybody else. So don't let failure bring you down. Again, if you feel like, hey, I've got the certifications, or I've got the education, or I feel like I'm ready for this job, just because a job is saying it wants 5 years experience or 10 years experience and all these certifications, doesn't mean that they're going to find that. That might be the unicorn or the best case candidate that they're going to get. But you're competing with a lot of people that probably have a similar background to yourself, and that you need to make sure that you're standing out, or that you can make yourself stand out in a way. And that could be through any of those things. But again, networking is incredibly important as well. So hopefully this is valuable for you. Again, my name is Heath Adams, aka the Cyber Mentor, and I do thank you for joining me for this keynote. Peace out.